If you want a hug, go to hell and find your mother. Welcome to Friday Night Chats Part 2. When I was discussing Severance, that was a line that made me howl. I thought that was hilarious. So, I'm not going to talk about Severance. I did that in Part 1, but hey, that's a good kind of transition into Part 2. Now, in Part 2 of this video, I am going to talk about some short stories I've read, some 5 CDs that I listened to, and some comics that I read. So I'm going to start with the comics. Then I'm going to talk about the short stories, and then finally I'm going to do the CDs. So let me go ahead and put this down right here. So I'm going to start with the comics. They're all spirit related. Now, I've been getting into spirit a lot because I forget why. Like either Donald Rex or Sleepy Reader, or I know For the Love of Comics, I watched a video of his. I don't know why, but I'm getting into spirit, probably because of the Warren magazines. And I'm really, really enjoying it. Now, I won a lot of spirit books, most of them modern ones. And it did include some of the older kitchen sink ones. So I'm going to talk about the different ones that I've been reading in the order that I read them. So for today, I'm going to talk about this first wave of DC Comics. There's 6. Then I'm going to talk about a DC Comics that was done by Darwin Cook. And then finally, I'm going to go over the kitchen sink release of the Spirit #1. Okay, so I'm going to do it in that order because that's the order that I read them in. And when I got this box in the mail, of course, I really bought this lot because of the older Spirit that were in it. And I thought, well, having the modern one would be interesting. But I'm so glad I got the modern ones because I immediately started reading them. Number one, because I knew they would be fast reads, especially compared to the Spirit. The older ones from the 40s. And I was shocked by how much I'm enjoying these. So the first wave of DC, which is something I didn't know about, is they brought these pulp heroes into the modern era of DC, and they brought Doc Savage, the Spirit, and I think there's one more, and they had them interacting with like Batman and stuff like that. And so I'm on the hunt to get more of these first wave books because I thoroughly enjoyed this comic. Now, I do not have the whole series. I have the first 6, and I liked it so much that I went out and I made a bid on a lot of more of these. And so I won it, and they are coming. So I had mixed feelings about the art. And I'm going to talk about the strengths and the weaknesses of the art. But the story was fun. It's very pulpy, and there's all kinds of holes in it. But it doesn't matter because it's very much like what I would assume a Dick Tracy comic is like. I've never read one. Or Batman. It's kind of like a cross between Batman and Dick Tracy. And these comics are fun. Now, the art, I found out later that the cover artist is different from the interior artist. And the cover art on these are pretty nice. And so, I, for example, I loved the art on the mechanical stuff and the humans. But the interior art is done by someone called Moratat. I don't know who this artist is. The art is serviceable, but where this artist shines is backdrops. So, for example, you're going to have something like that. The artists, like the faces and everything, can be a little bit clunky. Not to the point where it's horrible. So, for example, here's a young girl. You can see, like, the art is just, for some reason, a little bit strange. But the backdrops, like here's a cityscape backdrop that goes up the full page. The backdrops are really nice. And I would turn pages and then be continually surprised by a panel or two that would just jump out at me for its beauty, especially the backdrops. Also, there would be a lot of advertisements for comics of the time, and look at the gorgeous art on that one. I gotta hunt that one down. That one's beautiful. I'm gonna see if I can find another one of the cityscapes. And then the last thing that I want to say is that each one of these issues had a black and white backup story. Each one done by a powerhouse group of artists and writers. So, for example, this one is the backup story is Denny O'Neil and Bill Sienkiewicz. The second one is Harlan Ellison and Kyle Baker. The third one was Michael Uslan, F.J. DeSanto, and Justiniano. I actually didn't know those. But the fourth one is Marv Wolfman and Phil Winslade. David Lapham and Michael William Kaluta. I don't know if that's the same Kaluta of the DC in the 70s. Some of my favorite DC comic art is by Kaluta. And then this one is Brian Azzarello and Eduardo Risso. Anyways, the backup features are just as fun to read because you're looking at, they don't all work, but you've got this art that is just really interesting. Like, this is Sienkiewicz in black and white. Sometimes it was hard to understand what was really going on, but you just wanted to like look at the art and figure it out. Sienkiewicz is, I think, an artist that is really, really interesting, and I grab his stuff whenever I can. Here's issue 2. And oh, I also want to talk about one of my favorite elements of the Spirit, which is how they incorporate Spirit into every splash page. Now, this was done by Eisner, and I love that tradition of carrying it on. And whenever I open up a Spirit comic, the originals, I'm looking for that immediately because I love it so much. I think it's a great, I don't know if you say gag or, I don't know. It's just something that Eisner does that I really, really like. Before I put this series to rest, I want to show some of the other cityscapes. And I'm sorry, I probably should have set those aside before I actually started. Nope. This is the second issue. And this one has Carl Baker art. And I'm going to say that this is some of the best art. And I had a problem with it, though, because the art is stunning, but it's small. And I just wish that this were in magazine form so you could see the art better. And his window always reminds me of Dr. Strange's Sanctum Sanctorum. Yeah, the art on this is really cool. And like I said, I wish it were larger so that I could see it better. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and put this one to rest. I'm just going to see if I can flip through one more. I want to show you one more cityscape to kind of like convince you that I'm not crazy, that this guy does really nice cityscapes. Okay, I can't find one. I'm going to move on. So that was the first wave of the Spirit, and it was done by Mark Schultz and David Hine. Those are the writers, and the artist is Moritat. The next one I read, well, I only read the first issue, was Darwin Cook's version of the Spirit. Sorry, my throat is scratchy. And wow, I loved it. I didn't have time to get to the rest, and I'm certainly today I'm going to be reading more of these. The art is gorgeous. I love Darwin Cook, and I'm trying to get as much of his art as I can. But what I love, and the stories are fun too. I love this. He decided to make splash pages, double page spreads that include the title of the Spirit. And I don't know if you could see it clearly, but the Spirit is running, and it's like he's running in like a train station or through like a bunch of cars going by, and the lights of the city are spelling out spirit. I'm going to give you a sneak peek because I want to show you how Darwin Cook took this to the next level. His art is just sumptuous. Look at this one this is a little bit of a cheat, but look at that great double page spread, and she's saying, men, and she's holding up the spirit, and yeah. Let's look at number 3. I haven't read these, by the way. I cheated and I looked at these splash pages. This one is so cool. Now, I know it's hard to see, but the spirit is digging in a graveyard, and spirit is hitting the cemetery iron gates and spelling out spirit. That's so cool. And let's look at the next one. Sorry, everyone. I'm enamored with this art. He is chained to a woman going in the desert, and the cacti spell out spirit backwards. And then when the sun hits it on the sand, you can see it spelled spirit. How cool is that? I know I'm going to absolutely love reading these Darwin Cook issues. They're gorgeous. The art is fun. And I only read the first one, but I really enjoyed the story. And that is going to bring us to Kitchen Sink's reprint of The Spirit #1. Now, I recently reviewed the 29th issue of this. I just jumped in because it was the earliest issue I had. But I won #1 in a lot. And what I already said, I was like, whoa, is that I really appreciate that there is commentary written for us to understand the stories better. And so this one is going to reprint The Spirit in chronological order from after the war. Now, during the war, I guess Will Eisner did not work on The Spirit. Other people did. And so the magazines and the quarterlies are reprinting in order what he did before the war. And this starts right after the war. And it talks about how he had to change the spirit back into his idea of what the spirit was meant to be. And the first issue back is one of his Christmas stories. And I have to say that I enjoyed this. There's some conceits that he uses every Christmas story. Like he says, the spirit usually says, let's leave that crime fighting up to the spirit of Christmas because this spirit is busy with holiday things. And of course, he goes on to solve the crime. The art in this is really fun. The story is cute. It's got a Christmas message. And I'm not going to spoil it. It's a lot of fun. I do have to say, of course, that I'm not going to say this every time, but there is going to be a lot of racial elements in these stories from the 40s. That's just, it's coming with the territory. Now, in the second one that he did, I was a little bit disappointed because we got this great splash page and all we have is the spirit written on a tin can. And I like this idea of the spirit being written and playing around with it. And it's just on a tin can. And I was thinking to myself, because the first one, it was written on the cover of a book. And so I thought, well, maybe it took him a while before he actually developed that. And I would have to go back to the magazine versions, what happened before the war, but I don't think so. So I was like, wow, I was a little disappointed in that. But I'm not going to be disappointed long because I think in the next one he does that. So now this one what was this about? Oh, this one, he wanted to reintroduce some villains that he had from before the war. And they talked about that here. So he wanted to bring back some of these villains to kind of move the spirit in that direction. And so this is the spirit dealing with some of his older villains again. And it was fine. And then we get the next story, which it's not a full page, but look at this. I was like, yes, that is gorgeous. We have this young girl on a dock, and I guess it's like a channel, and between two docks or something like that. But look at how gorgeous that is. So good job. This was a fun story about orphans from overseas who come to the United States to start gangs, and how that gets out of control. It was a fun issue, and the main character is this Hildy girl that you saw in the opening shot. And then finally we have, I guess he did like half page spreads. There we have the spirit. And this is going to be the origin of the spirit, done by Dolan. So he's like the Commissioner Gordon here. And he tells the story of the spirit's origin from his point of view. And from the notes, it says that he changed a lot of the origin, the details, to kind of update it for the modern sensibility of what Will Eisner wanted. And this tells the story of the origin of the spirit. And I'm so glad that I finally got an origin, because I was kind of like not understanding where this character came from and what his goals and motivations were. I will say that the art style is very different still. Like, look at this picture where the spirit is running, and that's almost, I don't know, like a Fleischman, like that Superman kind of art style. I don't know if that's later or not, but this is just very different art than Eisner will have later, I think. And there we have the first issue of reprints of the spirit from after the war. Thoroughly enjoyable. If you're interested, hunt this down. This spirit journey is a lot of fun. Sorry, my throat is getting scratchy again. I'm really enjoying it. And it's time to move on to the books. Wow, I spent 17 minutes on the spirit. Okay, so it's time to talk about the short stories I read. I actually wrote notes specifically for the CDs and the short stories. So, sorry, I'm long-winded today, so I hope you're along for the ride. We're going to start with O. Henry. So I'm loving these Penguin little cloth-bound books. And as you can see, I've got a long way to go in this. But I told myself, this is not a race. I don't have to race through these books. I read when I have time, and now that I'm back at work, it's difficult. I read before bed, and I'm usually tired. And in fact, when I talk about it, the Asimov story that I'm going to talk to you about today, it took me 3 nights to read that, not because it was boring. It was actually great. But I would start reading it, and my eyes would just fall asleep. My eyes would fall asleep. My eyes would just close, and I knew it was time for bed. And so it took me a couple days just to get through that one story. And you know what? That's okay for me. I don't have to rush through these things. So I'm going to talk about 3 of the O. Henry stories I read. They're all pretty short. I mean, I've read about 4 stories, and I'm only about that far into it. So the first one was called Mammon and the Archer. Now, I had to look up Mammon, and this is a story about which is more powerful, love or money. And I'm not going to explain this story to you. I'm not going to like spoil it, tell you the plot. I was pleasantly surprised by the ending of this story. Mammon means, I guess it's the incarnation of greed. And the Archer, of course, is an incarnation of love, right? For Eros. It was a very enjoyable story. With a twist at the end that I should have seen coming, but I'm kind of one of these naive readers. I just kind of am along for the ride, and then when there's a twist, I'm happy I'm happy when I get fooled by a writer into not seeing a twist, because it makes the story that much more enjoyable. And when you're reading O. Henry, you know there's going to be a twist. It's like every story, it's based on a twist. And I think, I hope it's not just stupidity, but I think I kind of close my mind off to trying to figure it out because I just want to enjoy or savor the endings of the stories. But it could be I'm just too dumb to figure them out. The second one was called The Cop and the Anthem. And this was kind of a humorous story about a homeless guy who doesn't want to be on the streets. And it's winter. And so he's going to commit whatever crime it takes to be put into the local, I guess it's an island where they, like a prison. And so he would be warm and fed. And every crime he commits, it backfires and he doesn't get taken in. It's a fun story. And then the third one I read was called After 20 Years. And this starts out where there's a man who is talking to someone and he's explaining about how he and his friend went separate paths in lives and they knew it. And so they decided that no matter what, 20 years from that date, they would meet at that spot. And it's the day and the time of or around the day and the time that they're supposed to meet. So I won't tell the ending, of course, but that was an enjoyable story too. So I am thoroughly enjoying these O. Henry stories, The Gift of the Magi. Okay, the next one is the Lafcadio Hearn of Ghosts and Goblins. And I wrote down about 5 or 6 to talk to you about. So I might just drop it down to 3. The Gratitude of Samebito. There's a man who saves a man shark. And the man shark has to live in his pond because the portal to his dimension got closed. So the man has to feed the shark and take care of him. And I'm not going to tell you more about that. So if you're interested, got to read it. Of a Promise Kept. 2 brothers. One is leaving on a journey and he vows to come back by a certain date and time. That brother gets put into prison and the other brother has no way of knowing that. And the first brother does not want to break his promise at any cost. And so you're going to have to read the ending to know if that brother is able to keep his promise. And if so, what would he have to do in order to keep that promise? Of a Promise Broken. A man pledges he will never remarry, and when his wife dies, he buries her under the tree in the yard because she loves that tree when it blossoms. Now, he quickly goes back on his word, and like within 6 or 9 months, he's got a new wife. And of course, the woman under the tree is not happy about that. So read that to see what happens. I'm going to skip the next one. And I enjoyed every one of these stories, but the final one I'll tell you about, the story of Quan Shinkoji. A man has an art piece that seems to be alive, and this story was cool. I'm not going to tell you more. There's more I could tell you without ruining it, but I think if you're liking the description of these, you should get this book and read it. Okay, finally, I read 2 more stories in the Nightfall collection by Isaac Asimov. So that comes to 3. So I had originally read Nightfall in another collection, so I didn't reread that. It was the first one in this, and I skipped it. And the second one was called Green Patches. Now, Green Patches was not the greatest story, but it was really interesting. So it's about, so the green patches refer to every creature on a planet can be normal in every way, except instead of eyes, they have green moss-like features instead of eyes. They're like little cilia or, I don't know, like tentacle-like things. Now, a spaceship visits a planet, and they don't realize it, and pretty soon, they don't know how, but they become infected so that anything that is able to carry or reproduce soon becomes pregnant, and their offspring have those green patches, and there's no way of stopping it. So the ship actually has to destroy itself. It can't go back to Earth. So foolishly, another ship goes there and they scorch an area so that when they land, they have like a protective zone. Now, the story is, and a lot of the story is told from the point of view of one of the creatures from this planet that's able to sneak aboard the ship. And what's really interesting, it's from the point of view of the alien, which is like a microbe or an amoeba. And it shows what it thinks about the humans, which is so cool, because this creature is from a collective mind. And he talks about the humans and shows how much pity he has for them, because he calls them fragmented. And he thinks, or the creature thinks, that it's doing what's best for these, like taking pity on these creatures. It has so many parallels with what religious missionaries did. But anyways, besides that, it was a cool story. And the third one was so good. It's called Hostess. And it's about a husband and a wife. The wife is a biologist, and she's agreed to have an alien representative come to their planet and to Earth for the first time. It's going to be like the first meeting, and that alien representative is going to stay in their home, and they're going to be host to this alien representative. And the alien isn't like a humanoid. It's got like a bovine, insectile appearance. And of course, the descriptions are really interesting, and it goes to the lengths to try to show what that creature thinks of us and how repulsive we look, just like like he or it looks the same to us. It's a fascinating story. Now, it went in places that I wasn't entirely satisfied with, but nevertheless, it was an amazing story. And even though it wrapped up the way I didn't want to, it left you thinking, and where does this go and what repercussions? Like, when Asimov is good, he is good. He creates this whole world, and he talks about these 5 races of intelligences and how Earthlings are different. And you've got to read the story to get all the details, because there's so much that he packs into a short story. Wow. So that one was Hostess. Okay. And finally, I'm going to talk about the 5 albums that I listened to, and I prepared clips of each one. And my throat will hold out. Now, number 500 was an album that was familiar to me. I actually used to have the album. I actually sold it. But it's a great album. It had 3 hits. So this is the Gorillaz' Demon Days from 2005. The 3 hits were Feel Good, Dare, and Dirty Harry. And I don't know how anyone could listen to the song Dare and not dance. Like, I hear that song and I've got to move. So I'm not going to focus on any of those songs because they were the hits. I only got one snippet from each of these to keep it a little bit short. And this is a great album. Even the minor tracks, I mean the ones that didn't become hits, are fun. It's a nice album. So we're gonna listen to a track called I forget what it's called, but it's got that, you'll see, or you'll hear, All Alone. Okay, so that song is so catchy that I would be singing All Alone throughout the whole day after I heard that song. That is an earworm. I don't know if you can tell, but the song is kind of like that throughout the whole song, and you just hear them saying all alone, all alone, all alone, and then in that one weird voice, all alone, and that is what drills into your brain. It's such a great song. Okay, next, 499 was the album School of Seven Bells, Alpinisms from 2008. This was an album I'd never heard of, and it's described as experimental dream pop and new gaze. So, yeah, I didn't know what any of that is. But anyways, yeah, it's definitely experimental dream pop. I don't know about the new gaze stuff. But we're going to hear a clip from the first track. And this can give you an idea of what the rest of the album is like. It is a very nice album. In some of the tracks, I really heard Cocteau Twins. If you like the Cocteau Twins, like Heaven in Las Vegas, you're going to like this album for sure. So, yeah, that's repetitive, and even the name is all put together. I Am Under No Disguise, and the first time I saw it, I thought that was La, or El, La Munde. Yeah, I could not figure it out because I didn't realize that L was actually an I, or that I was, you get what I mean. So, when I finally figured it out, I was laughing, but if you like that track, you're gonna like this album. It's not all repetitive like that, but this is a fun album, and I'm glad I listened to it. The next album is 498, which is Steely Dan's Two Against Nature from 2000, and this was their first album in 20 years, discounting solo work that they might have done. And we're gonna listen to a song called Cousin Dupree.
When I see my little cousin Janine walk in, well, all I could say was ouch. I wonder how you've grown like a rose. Well, we used to play when we were 3. How about a kiss for your cousin Dupree? When I see my little cousin.
Okay, so I'm not a huge Steely Dan aficionado. I certainly like them. I don't think I'm sophisticated enough because Steely Dan has such a rabid fan base, and they're usually people who are sophisticated musicians and they can understand or appreciation of music because of their jazz and how they did things differently and how their tempos change. And I'm just not that sophisticated. I do like a lot of their music. Their lyrics are interesting, and in this one, I don't know if you could hear it, but this is about an older man who has not made much of himself. He goes back home to live in his parents' house, I would assume, and he sees his younger cousin, and he's enamored with her. It's all around kind of gross. But that's in many instances, they write about characters like that. And I'm going to say that this whole album is interesting. It's good. It's just like any other Steely Dan. So if you like Steely Dan and their sound, then you're going to enjoy this album. The next one is Richard Thompson, Sweet Warrior from 2007. Now, I'd never heard this album, but I certainly know Richard Thompson. I have a couple of his, I think it's called Mock Tutor or Mock Turtle? Mock Tutor. And I had the one with his they Shoot Out the Lights, I think, with his at the time Linda, and they were going through a messy breakup. And of course, I do have some of Fairport Convention, blah blah blah. So I'm just saying that I'm not totally unfamiliar with his work, but I'd never heard this album. This album I loved. I would recommend this a lot. So we're going to listen to a song called Dad's Gonna Kill Me. I'm wondering if Oh, I have the volume down. Okay, so if you like Richard Thompson and what he does, his singing is great on this. He tells great stories. I would recommend this album. I actually really enjoyed this album. Now, the penultimate album is Amina, and that's Amina. And I think the album is called Kurr, Kurr, or reverse. And this one's from 2007. Never heard of them. But upon researching it, it's Sigur Ros's touring and studio string quartet debut. I tried to listen to a Sigur Rós album when I was a lot younger, and it was just so wild. I probably should listen to it now. I'd probably enjoy it more, but at the time I was like, what is this? But anyways, this album is very classical in a sense, and I loved listening to this while I was reading. It's very pretty. I'm gonna just play a short clip. That one was called Rugla. And I mean, if you like that, you're gonna enjoy this album. It's very pleasant. And the last one is Broadcast and the Focus Group Investigate Witch Cults of the Radio Age. And this is the one that I actually know quite well. I actually have this album because I liked the CD so much that when I saw it on album, I actually bought the album. So this is very strange. It's like the Skinamarink soundtrack, kind of. It's basically all these weird noises put together to music that's always changing, and it's just a lot of fun to listen to. It's not done in an annoying way. It's not done in a really jarring way. As strange as it sounds, it's pleasant in many ways. So in the write-up, it says they use nursery rhymes, horror clips, spectral laughter, ancient mantras. So let's go ahead and listen to, I actually have two clips from this one. And the next one is this one. I remember now that the reason I had two different ones is I wanted to show you what it was like with vocals and without. Because without the vocals, you're going to hear a lot of kind of like weird, like sounds being added to some strange music. This is a very enjoyable listen as well, but it's very strange to listen to in the dark. And did I do everything? So I went over the comics, I went over the CDs, and I went over the short stories. Yeah, I'm done. Oh my gosh, this one is 40 minutes too. So I really kind of went overboard this week with a lot of description and showing things off. But if you stuck around for both, I really want to say thank you for all your support. And of course, any comments that you want to make are always appreciated. I do want to say that I've been spending a lot of time reading, and that means I haven't been on YouTube as much. I haven't been making as many videos, and I haven't been watching as many videos. And it's bad because there are so many of you out there that I want to support, but there is only so much time in a day. And sometimes, we go through cycles where we're like heavily on YouTube. And then, I went back to work. And so now I'm trying to get, into reading. And it's not because I don't want to watch your videos. It's just that there's not enough time to do everything. So it's not that I'm dropping you. I'm certainly going to be watching videos. And I might, if you're a channel that I watch regularly, I'll probably just jump on and watch 3 or 4 of your videos in a row and comment. But I'm saying all this because I really do appreciate everyone's support out there, especially, if you take the time to watch my videos and even if you comment, I really appreciate all of that. So this is Garage Geek signing out.